David Herbert Donald, author of Lincoln. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but in the Christian Science Monitor, there's a review of your book that says, it's by Gabor Borit, and it says the following. By the way, have you seen this?
I have not seen it, no.
Here's the first couple of sentences. This is a masterwork. It stands alone among 135 years of Lincoln biographies.
My gracious. I'm not sure I deserve it, but I'm pleased.
Its author, David Herbert Donald, has spent much of a lifetime studying and teaching the Civil War era and its central figure. What have you done to deserve this?
I'm not sure I've done enough to deserve that. But I've been working in this area for a long, long time. He's quite right about that.
When did you first get introduced to Abraham Lincoln?
I came up from Mississippi, my home state, to the University of Illinois to write a history of Mississippi. And I fell under the spell of the great professor at the University of Illinois, James G. Randall, who was working on his Lincoln biography, ultimately published as Lincoln the President in 4 volumes. I was captivated by him. I became his research assistant, worked with him closely, and became an apprentice, which is the best way for a historian to be trained, I think.
What year was this?
This was, oh goodness, this is about 1942 through 48, along in there. This is a long time ago. And having got immersed in it, he suggested, well, why don't you go ahead and do a Lincoln subject for your dissertation? I had already done something, and so I said, well, what should we do? He said, Lincoln's law partner, Herndon, has never been properly studied. His papers have just become available. Why don't you try? So I did. My first book was called Lincoln's Herndon, a biography of Lincoln's law partner, published in 1948, and I'm so pleased to say, recently reissued in paperback after all these years. So I've been in this field for a long time.
This cover, did you have anything to do with it?
I did. The original cover was very different from this. We had a younger Lincoln looking rather abstractly, I think, in the distance, with behind him the unfinished dome of the Capitol and so on. We liked it. It was quite colorful. The sales representatives at Simon & Schuster said, this will never do. It won't do, they said, because people will look at it and say, that's a book for young adults. That's not a grown-up book. So back to the drawing board, and we tried several, and this came out, and I'm very pleased with it. It seems to be a distinguished jacket, and since I can't draw anything like that, I can only report how I feel about it.
Thought I'd do something a little different for this Booknotes, just because I've never done it before, and you see it happening more and more, and that is, I bought this.
Great.
Which is the audio. We'll get a close-up of this. Now, did you have anything to do with this?
Yes, in the sense that I reviewed the script. This obviously had to be an abridgment of his very long text to get it down to 6 hours, and so a lot had to be left out. And I reviewed it in the hopes of getting it as complete as one can in 6 hours, and that to see that not too much was left out. I had nothing to do with the recording of it, except from time to time I was called to ask about pronunciations. How do you pronounce, they said, is it Chickahominy, Chickahominy? How do you pronounce it? I'd say grandly, Chickahominy River, that kind of thing. So in that sense I had a little to do, but not much.
The 6 hours of tape, I listened to it to get ready for this, and listened to an actor, James Naughton.
A very good actor too, and good voice.
How much is on the tapes, or better put, how much isn't on the tapes that's in the book?
I would guess this is approximately a third of the book. So there's a lot in the book that isn't there, and necessarily some complexities have to be omitted. And of course, obviously, the enormous amount of material in the notes is not in the audio, but you would want them there anyway.
Let's listen to just the opening part, and it only takes about a minute or so.
Good.
Lincoln by David Herbert Donald. Abraham Lincoln was not interested in his ancestry. In his mind, he was a self-made man who had no need to care about his family tree. In 1860, when John Locke Scripps of the Chicago Tribune proposed to write his campaign biography, Lincoln told him, "Why, Scripps, it is a great piece of folly to attempt to make anything out of my early life. It can all be condensed into a single sentence, and that sentence you will find in Gray's Elegy, the short and simple annals of the poor. That's my life, and that's all you or anyone else can make of it."
David Herbert Donald, what did he mean by that?
He meant that he did think he was a self-made man, that he did not think that he inherited a great deal from his parents. His father, he was more or less in rebellion against, or at least he was removed from, I would think would be the better word. His mother died when he was an infant, a small boy, 7, 9 years old, so that he didn't feel that he gained much from his parents. He thought that he had created a life of his own that was very different from that of Thomas Lincoln. Thomas Lincoln was a hard-working, comfortably fixed, small farmer who did manual labor. Lincoln did not like to do manual labor. He could work very hard, but he didn't like it. He was a professional. He had established himself as a member of the upper class in Springfield. He was a leading politician, and he just simply didn't want to be thought of as a product of Thomas Lincoln and of Nancy Hanks.
You say in the opening that you gave attention to 4 different things. And I want to go through each of the 4
All right.
and have you expound on them a little bit. One of them was that you wanted to give attention to his unquenchable ambition.
Right.
Why did that? Where did you learn in your process of over the years of investigation that he had ambition?
I think every Lincoln student has always quoted one remark of his partner, William Herndon. I certainly quoted it in an earlier book, and it's here and so on. His ambition was a little engine that knew no rest. Herndon was his law partner, sat in the same law office with him for 16 years, and watched him, and constantly Lincoln was looking for the next step. What do you do next? What's the next opportunity, both in law and in politics? He saw that this was a man who was really going places and was determined that he would succeed. That ambition, I think, grew from his very early experiences. As a boy, he excelled. He was taller than, he was stronger than, he was smarter than any of his contemporaries out in southern Indiana. And he knew that he was better than they were. He had no doubt whatsoever about his ability, and what he needed was simply to find the right niche to fit in, and that was where he would indeed excel.
Second on your list is that you want to give attention to his brain-numbing labor in his law practice.
That is certainly true. We, for the first time, are able really to document and show this. The Lincoln legal papers have been underway in Springfield now for about 7 years, something like that. They've collected papers on every case in which Abraham Lincoln was ever involved. They've searched county courthouses all over Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, other places as well. They've collected not merely what Lincoln has to say, but what his opposing lawyers had to say, what the judge's rulings were, what the jury decisions were, what the fees. We can, for the first time, see the whole pattern of that case, that career. And the amount of work that Lincoln went through is just almost unbelievable. After all, there were no secretaries, there were no copying machines, there were no fax machines, everything done by hand. One memorable document runs to 53 handwritten pages that Lincoln himself laboriously writes out by hand. He worked very, very hard, not merely at the papers, but at the research behind those papers. So the image that some people have of Lincoln as sort of good country lawyer who shambles into the courtroom, cracks a few jokes, wins over the jury, gets his case. This isn't the case. He was a very hard-working, well-prepared lawyer.